Monday, December 25th, Christmas Day, about 1:30 p.m. It has been about 8 days since the end of our last significant rain event. We're getting the beginnings of the next rain event. Most of it will move in probably tonight, but you can see the turbidity of our front pond, SCM number 4, is really good. 8 days after the last rain event ended, the inlet pipe is fairly free. It's the riprap is clear. You can see the gray rocks. Same thing with the riprap separating the forebay with the main pond. It's pretty clear, and you can look at the water itself. You can see 5-10 feet down through the water, if not more. So it's in good shape, the water clarity. There's obviously no active construction anywhere going on in this pond's basin, and it has not been for a long time. We'll transition over to our other pond, SCM number 3, what we call the rear pond, and as well as the sediment basin for Bonwood, which has not yet been converted to a wet retention pond. Again, Christmas Day, same time, about 1:30 p.m. This is the other pond. We'll walk up to in just a second. In the distance, SCM number 3, our rear pond, wet retention pond for the preserve at Deerfield HOA. You can see these 4 homes uphill Kenmere Lane. They've been under construction for almost a year when ground was broken. These homes are in Bonwood, in another community. You can see it's uphill. The water runs downhill just by natural topography. You can see the story for this pond is quite a bit different. We're about 8 days since the end of the last rain event, and the turbidity of this pond is much different, much more cloudy and muddier than the front pond. This is a result of construction runoff. You can see the riprap, the main inlet has a lot of mud staining the rocks. Same thing if we go over here to the riprap separating the forebay from the main pond, which is now visible. The water levels dropped since the storm ended 8 days ago, but you can clearly see that these rocks are stained a lot muddier just from all the mud that's washed in uphill to this pond. And again, you can see both the main pond and the forebay have high turbidity 8 days after the end of the last event. It's notable too, in the distance is a secondary inlet pipe. This was approved by the city a year ago. You can see how that's remained clear, similar to the main inlet pipe riprap and the riprap separating the forebay and the main pond. For our other pond, this is like that. It's clear and free of mud, and there's obviously no construction running up from uphill, unlike down from into the main inlet pipe here to our rear pond, which completely raises turbidity for the entire pond. Lastly, we'll look at the sediment basin for Bonwood on the other side of the neighborhood. Thank you. Okay, third part of the video and last part. This is another basin, a third basin. We're on the other side of the preserve at Deerfield, completely out of Deerfield. We're in Bonwood completely. This is a sediment basin. This has not yet been converted to a wet retention pond, as is normal, because there's still construction going on in this basin, just as there is for the basin in the last wet retention pond. This is our rear pond for Deerfield. You can clearly see that this sediment basin has much more similar turbidity and mud in it to our second wet retention pond than our first wet retention pond. In other words, the two almost act like sediment basins themselves, instead of the second pond being a sediment basin. In fact, you can look carefully. The riprap, the top of that is actually not even stained. The bottom portion is stained with some mud. You might recall from the second part of the same video, the riprap separating the forebay and the main pond of the wet retention pond for our rear was completely stained top to bottom. The main inlet here is partially stained, but in any event, it's pretty obvious to see the sediment basin for Bonwood is like our wet retention pond for the rear, and not like our wet retention pond for the front, and that's because of the active construction ongoing. Thank you.